Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. We're here in Denmark, in Copenhagen to be exact, and we're going to find out what's happening in the local news, European news, and greater news here on Wacky Wednesday. Today on Before Coffee, 3 passengers with COVID on board cruise ship grounded off Greenland.
Also, a moose is on the loose in Santa Fe and captured.
And in wacky news, 1,000-year-old fossils of alien corpses displayed in Mexico's Congress as UFO experts testifies.
And we spin the Squeal of Fortune again.
In culture news, we can't believe you put up with this. Europeans call out America's toxic work culture.
Those are the headlines today. On today, September 13th, 2023, which is European Heritage Days. Today on Before Coffee.
Coming out of Denmark, well, technically coming out of Greenland, which is part of Denmark, there has been a COVID outbreak on a cruise ship, and that everyone's been isolated on the Ocean Explorer as it's stuck in Appleford National Park. This is from Jordan Beasley on The Guardian. 3 people on board a cruise ship run aground in Greenland's Applefjord National Park have COVID-19. The ship's operator, Australia-based Aurora Expeditions, has confirmed, but a passenger aboard says everybody remains in good spirits. The Australian-operated Ocean Explorer, which is carrying 206 passengers and crew, ran aground while touring the national park on Monday, around 1,400 kilometers northeast of Greenland's capital, Nuuk. Aurora Expeditions said in a statement that the 3 passengers are currently in isolation and are doing well. They are being looked after by an onboard doctor and medical team. The 104-meter-long ship, which departed from Norway on the 1st of September and runs until the 22nd of September, remained stuck in mud and silt on Thursday after an attempt by a fishing trawler to free the luxury cruise ship at high tide on Wednesday failed. Commander Brian Jensen of Danish Navy's Joint Arctic Command said that a naval vessel was en route to assist freeing the boat and was expected to arrive as soon as Friday. A cruise ship in trouble in the national park is obviously a worry. The nearest help is far away. Our units are far away. The weather can be very unfavorable, Commander Brian Jensen of the Danish Navy's Joint Arctic Command said in a statement on Tuesday. However, in the specific situation, we do not see any immediate danger to human life or the environment, which is reassuring, he added. Australia-based Aurora Expeditions, which operates the ship, said that all passengers and crew were safe. Many of the passengers are believed to be Australian, along with a mix of tourists from other countries including New Zealand, Britain, the United States, and South Korea. We are actively engaged in efforts to free the MV Ocean Explorer from its grounding. Our foremost commitment is to ensure the vessel's recovery without compromising safety, Aurora said. Gina Hill, an Australian who was on board with her husband, said they felt a shudder, then what sounded like a scrape when the ship ran aground. She said that the passengers were in good spirits and were being entertained by lectures and stories of expeditions by the crew. No one seemed to be afraid, and they're giving us updates quite regularly, Hill said. Hill said after crew alerted passengers that there were confirmed cases of COVID, some passengers had chosen to wear masks in the public area, others had not, she said. Located across the ice sheet that covers the world's largest island, Applefjord sits in a remote corner of Greenland, some 204 kilometers from the closest settlement. Oh, here we go. Itokortormit, which itself is nearly 1,400 kilometers from country's capital Nuuk. Captain Flemming Madsen of the Danish Joint Arctic Command told Associated Press that the passengers and crews are doing fine, and all I can say is that they got a lifetime experience. So, there you go. It's technically not out of Denmark, but Greenland is actually part of Denmark. It's the only European country in America. So that's your news there. There's a little bit of an outbreak and they are stuck in the mud, but they'll come out of it easily, it sounds like, according to the Danish.
From the AP, here's a story from Weird Wacky Wednesday. We have a moose on the loose. Wandering bull moose is captured in downtown Santa Fe, moved to habitat in northern New Mexico. We were just talking about this the other day, the southern range of elks in America, and we never even considered the moose can go as far as Santa Fe, New Mexico, through the Rocky Mountains. Once called the Rocky Mountains, now called the Walkie Mountains. I'm sorry. A wandering bull moose was captured in downtown Santa Fe and relocated to a suitable habitat in northern New Mexico, authorities said. State game and fish officials and animal service officers for the city said the moose was spotted about 8 a.m. Tuesday near Fort Marcy Park. Officers set up a perimeter to protect the residents and pedestrians in the park, which is a popular walking area. And so there's more to scroll on to at the bottom. Let's say it's supposed to be something that says more to the story. There it is. Okay. Authorities said the bull moose can be aggressive towards humans and pets, especially during the breeding season, which began in late September. The moose was sedated with a tranquilizer dart and loaded into a trailer before being evaluated by the Fish and Game Department veterinarian and determined to be in good health. Department biologists estimate the moose weighed more than 900 pounds, or 400 kilograms, and was 4 to 5 years old. Game and fish officials said the moose are protected game in New Mexico and there is not an open hunting season for them. Okay, so there's your short and sweet story about wildlife in New Mexico that we didn't expect in New Mexico.
With some wacky news, a 1,000-year-old fossil in the Mexico Congress. The fossilized, this is from Euronews. This is the fossilized bodies presented in glass cases by journalists and UFO scientists. James Mawson in Mexico's parliament are said to be 1,000 years old. The bodies of two alleged alien beings were exhibited before politicians in a special session of the Mexican Congress today, on Wednesday. The fossilized bodies presented by journalists and self-proclaimed UFO scientists are ufologists Jamie Mawson and displayed in a glass case, were retrieved from Cusco in Peru and are said to be 1,000 years old. These specimens are not part of the evolution of our world. They were not recovered from a UFO scrap. They were found fossilized in a diatom moss mine, Mawson said, testifying under oath. The session in the Mexican Congress comes weeks after another in front of the U.S. Congress, but this appearance was much more sensational in its context, or in its content. Mawson said that the samples were analyzed by the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, and the scientists who managed to get DNA samples from the specimens and used radiocarbon testing to determine their age. However, despite the intensive examination, the fossil was found to be covered with a layer of sand. We are not alone in this vast universe. We need to accept reality, said Mawson, who argued that the public has the right to learn about non-human beings and technologies. Mawson was accompanied by at the session by former U.S. pilot Ryan Greaves and Avi Loeb, professor of the astrophysics at Harvard University. Graves also presented evidence at a hearing in the U.S. Congress in July. It is now generally accepted in scientific political circles that there are unusual phenomenon that cannot be identified, but there are still deep disagreements about their origin. Mawson gave testimonies under oath, but his claims have not been scientifically proven, and has been associated with previous discoveries that have since been debunked. He was involved in another high-profile hoax in 2017, involving the discovery of fossilized remains in Nazca in Peru. Mawson claimed the body, which had an elongated skull, was actually the mummified corpse of an alien. It was later revealed that the Nazca mummy was in fact a human child whose head had been bound by cloth, rope, or boards in an ancient practice, according to fact-checking website Snoops.com. So, is it an alien? Probably not. It's probably just a small human or a child, but we will find out. Or maybe we won't find out, and this story will just be buried like many other of those conspiracies. Aliens are real, people.
It's time to spin the Squeal of Fortune. In the wheel. There we go. And our winner is Stephen C. Lee. From Columbine to coup, how a former police chaplain wound up getting charged in Georgia alongside Trump. This poor bastard. This is from Matt Stibe, Intelligencer's staff writer. In the morning of December 15th, 2020, Reverend Stephen Lee was far from his home in Illinois, sitting in a red Ford Fusion outside a house in Georgia. Poll worker Ruby Freeman, who just called the police on him. "I'm a pastor and I'm working with some folks who are trying to help Ruby out and also get some truth about what's going on," Lee told the officer who arrived in the scene, according to the body cam footage obtained by Reuters last year. Over the previous 24 hours, Lee had knocked on Freeman's door, passed a message to her neighbor letting her know he could help her make things right. Based on deceptively edited video distributed by Donald Trump's team, Lee erroneously believed that Ruby and her daughter, both poll workers in Fulton County, had taken suitcases full of ballots for Joe Biden and scammed them after hours without supervision. Trump allies hoping to overturn his loss in Georgia considered this the smoking gun, showing evidence of voter fraud. "I've got some pro bono servers for her if she's interested," Lee told the officer, adding that she's terribly spooked. For the 20 years leading up to that moment, Lee had dedicated much of his life to helping people in crisis, traveling the country to minister to Americans who lived through hurricanes, mass shootings, and terrorist attacks. But by showing up at Freeman's house that morning, he stumbled into a wide-ranging conspiracy that threatens the former president with an unpardonable racketeering charge. Deep in the 98-page indictment of Trump in Georgia, Lee was named as one of the 18 co-conspirators charged with attempting to influence witnesses and conspiring to solicit false statements and writings. Prosecutors described his action as an act of racketeering activity in furtherance of the conspiracy to overturn the election. A representative for Lee did not respond for requests for comment and has yet to answer the charges in court. Lee, a 70-year-old Lutheran pastor, is unlike most of the other figures charged in the indictment. Politicians and political activists working directly with the Trump campaign to pressure state officials to change the vote. After serving as a sheriff's deputy in California in the 1980s, Lee was ordained as a minister in 1992 and began serving as a police chaplain. In 1990, after moving to Colorado Springs, he was a head chaplain for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, agents who responded to the Columbine school shooting. The event stayed with him more than any incident in my experience. Columbine remains a black hole of residual pain and agony, he recalled in July 2001. 2 months later, he would travel in New York to serve as chaplain for the first responders for 9/11. They often just need somebody to hold their hand and be alongside them, he told the Palo Alto Weekly back then, with groups he founded such as Peace Officer Ministries and Quick Response Team Ministry. Lee traveled the country to natural disasters like Hurricane Katrina and mass shootings, including those at Virginia Tech and Las Vegas. In a blog post about the Pulse nightclub attack in 2016, he described his crisis ministry at mass shootings, which he called demonic births. Lee and other pastors would break into small groups of cops on the scene to mitigate the emotional impact of the violence. We must accept our human limitations in preventing evil, sometimes tough for the first responders to do, but we also realize we can turn those frustrations over to a loving God who walks over with us through the shadowy valley. He shared these teachings to Christian police officers and self-published books like Back Up on the Beat and God's Word for Police Officers. During 2016 election, Lee became enamored with Trump. He traveled to New York City to pose in front of Trump Tower, where he claimed to have briefed a Trump transition team advisor on volunteer federal law enforcement complacent chaplaincy proposal. The president has issued a clarion call to make America great again and drain the swamp. No matter how we voted in the recent election, we shall all support these noble goals. Yeah, right. After Trump lost the 2020 election, Lee went to Georgia to help prove the outgoing president's bogus claims of voter fraud. After he failed to speak with Ruby Freeman, prosecutors say he contacted Harrison Floyd, the leader of the group Black Voices for Trump, who was tasked with rallying African Americans to vote for Trump. Lee believed that Freeman, a black woman, was afraid to speak to him because he was white. Floyd then reached out to Vithian Kutu, the Kanye West publicist, former publicist, who we've talked about previously, before we had the Squeal of Fortune. So she's not on the squeal. She's just already been covered, I think. He reportedly threatened her with jail time unless she admitted to the election fraud scheme. After months of harassment by Trump reporters, Freeman and her daughter were cleared of any wrongdoing, while Lee, Floyd, and Kuti were all charged in the indictment. It is still unclear to what extent, if all, Lee was in contact with the Trump campaign, but a man who has dedicated his life to upholding the law and now has found himself on the wrong side of it. So, Mr. Lee, if you're out there, Stephen or Steven or whatever your name is, it's time to squeal. That's why we call it the Squeal of Fortune.
Today's culture segment will be about Europeans hating on Americans, because that's what they like to do. This is an opinion piece by Partners in Fire. Americans are in love with work. We brag about our long hours, lack of sleep, while buying productivity-boosting self-help books so we can make the most of each waking moment. However, we don't get much out of it. We make pitiful wages, have very few sick days, and are expected to sacrifice our days off on the boss's whims. Our friends across the pond lurk in American work-focused subs on Reddit for the shock factor. Is this really how things are in the States, they wonder? One European user posted in the popular anti-work subreddit expressing disgust at America's working conditions. European user calls out the toxic work culture. So I'm a longtime lurker of this sub and just wanted to say some words, the original poster began. I'm a foreman at a warehouse in the EU country I'm in. At what kind of piss poor working condition you have in the US? If I could, I would offer you all a job at my workplace, because the shit I read here would never fly. The user offered examples of a messed up working conditions they often see discussed in the sub, saying that none of these would fly in their own European country. In the US, many employers expect employees to be on call, even if they aren't paid for it. Workers should drop everything, come in, called, cover shifts for coworkers, and be a team player. According to the OP, you should enjoy your life on a free day and not think about work. Some retail and service workers must cover their own shifts if they need a sick day. A manager won't approve the time off unless the worker finds someone to cover. The OP pointed out that covering shifts is a manager's responsibility. It shouldn't fall on the sick employees' shoulders. When users seek help from the anti-work sub regarding work conditions, respondents are generally quick to point out that HR exists to protect the company, not the employer. OP thinks this system is backwards. HR should be on the employee's side, not the boss's, they said. Workers in the US are lucky if they get 2 weeks off per year for vacation time. Many European countries require companies to offer far more. The original poster expressed disdain at the limited time off enjoyed by Americans. You should at least have 4 weeks of paid vacation. We are humans, not robots. Speaking of sick times, OP was flabbergasted that the US limits the number of sick days an employee gets. People can't control their illnesses. It's impossible to control how long a sickness will last, when you'll catch a new bug, or when the kids get sick. In the US, people without sick time have to choose between losing money and going to work sick. Other Europeans also agree. I started with 6 weeks here in Germany. Since I didn't take 5 days later, I have 35 days this year, said one, discussing their paid time off. Stuff I read here is unimaginable, they added. Spain here, announced another. 22 days off plus 14 bank holidays, maximum of 1,880 hours per year, including overtime, with mandated 1.5 days of rest a week and 12 hours between shifts. And yeah, if you're too sick to work, that's it. 2 days or 6 months, doesn't matter. That's just the legal bare minimum. Normally, collective bargaining will improve it one way or another. We have problems, but compared to America, this is not a big deal. So, American users did respond to this toxic work environment post. Users pointed out that companies would prefer if employees came to work sick because they could hire fewer people. They expect us to work sick, said one. A literal doctor's note will not excuse you from getting points in the worst places to work for, replied another. Others said that even companies that offer time off restrict how employees use it. After working 90 to 100-hour weeks all year, my work wouldn't even let me stack my 5 days of vacation with my 2 days off to have a 7 consecutive days in a row. The reasoning? Just because. No, commented one. Some Redditors took the opportunity to discuss why our work culture is so harmful to workers. Key points include lack of social cohesion and crabs in a bucket mentality, and successful propaganda against collective bargaining. Others pointed out that the idea of American individualism and exceptionalism. There is a ridiculous, inexplicably accepted attitude here that you just power through whatever, said just one user. No one wants to hear your excuses as to why you can't work. They really do make you feel like you're a whiny, weak little liar who is just trying to get out of their responsibilities. Anyone who stands up against it is swiftly singled out as a liar, not a team player, and a whiner, they added. So, there you go. There's a little culture update here on Europeans' reactions to the American work environment. I'm not surprised.
This day in history. Well, except cookies, just this one time. On this day in history, we are going to go towards the bottom because we start at the bottom on this because it goes back as far and then they just update it. In 1759, British forces defeated the French in the Battle of Quebec. In 1848, American railroad foreman Phineas Gage suffered a traumatic brain injury when an iron rod shot through his skull and obliterated the greater part of his left frontal lobe of his brain. He survived and apparently no lasting physical damage, although some claim that his personality had changed. Well, he had a rod shoot through his head. Milton Snavely Hershey, founder of the Hershey Chocolate Company, was born on this day in 1857. In 1886, American educator, writer, and philosopher Alan Locke, remembered as leader of the chief interpreter of the Harlem Resistance, was born. In 1911, American singer and songwriter, mandolin player Bill Monroe, considered the father of bluegrass music, was born. Happy birthday, Bill Monroe. You are 112. Not alive anymore, unfortunately. 1971, a vault of the New York Attica Correctional Facility ended after a bloody state police assault on the prison in which 29 inmates and 10 hostages were killed. Attica, that's from Dog Day Afternoon. Attica. 1990, the law enforcement series Law & Order, which is still on the air, debuted on the NBC television network. The show became one of the longest-running primetime TV dramas in the United States, now hitting 34 years. And 2015, American basketball player Moses Malone, who was dominating center in the NBA's premier offensive rebounder during the 1980s, leading the Philadelphia 76ers to a championship in '83. Well, he died on this date at the age of 60. Our featured event, September 13th. It was 1598 when Philip III was crowned King of Spain and Portugal. That's right, King Philip II of Portugal, crowned on this day in 1598, was virtuous in his private affairs but indifferent as a ruler and extravagant in his spending, exacerbating Spain's growing economic problems, and Spain was about to not be a world power any minute now at that time. And featured biography is Roald Dahl, British author. Was born on this day, September 13th, 1916. If he's featured, they sure didn't give me a lot of detail on him. Okay, this is from, he wrote Matilda, there you go. But it could have been something they could have put there, right? Something, they fill me in and everything else. I'm also born on this day in 1973, Fabio Cannavaro, Italian football player. 1969, Tyler Perry, cross-dressing comedian, was born. 1969, Shane Warne, Australian cricketer, was born. 1916, Ronald Dahl, we already covered him. Author of Matilda, we know now. Voice in the distance said it. Arnold Schoenberg, American composer, was born on this day in 1874. And what day is it? Speaking of what day it is, it's European Heritage Days. It is European Heritage Days. It's International Chocolate Day. National Bald is Beautiful Day. For the cancer patients. I'm not just bald people in general, but I think it's for cancer patients because they're showing a small child with no hair. National Celiac Disease Awareness Day. Raised awareness about celiac disease, genetic autoimmune disorder affecting millions of Americans. It's National Hug Your Boss Day. So if you're a real good butt kisser, it's time to really show it. National Jose Day. So if your name is Jose or Joseph or Josefia or anything like that, it's your day. National Juan Day also. Okay, so Juan and Jose got to have the same day. That's absurd. That's absurd. You can't have two guys with popular names the same. That's just, who's coming up with these things? National Kids That Take Over the Kitchen Day. I'm all for that as long as they don't start it on fire. National Twilighters Day. So if you love that movie and that book series Twilight, and you love vampires and werewolves and all them mythical beasts out there chewing on flesh, hey, it's your day. Pet Birth Defect Awareness Day. Oh my lord, it's horrible to have a pet with a birth defect. Positive Thinking Day. If you have a pet with a birth defect, it's time to think positive about it. You can do something. Programmers Day is also today. It's Ronald Dahl Day. Former RAF fighter pilot, intelligence officer, and diplomat. Ronald Dahl is best known as the world's best loved storytellers and works like Matilda. So we didn't know he was a pilot until just now. Now we know a lot about him. Supernatural Day, as this is a supernaturally long list. And it's also Uncle Sam Day, as if we didn't need another stinking day in America to celebrate America. We have Uncle Sam Day, a mythical character who drafted you into the army. And we all hate him. Because he drafted you. Uncle Sam wants you! No! It's International Chocolate Day. It is European, we did European Harris. It's Defy Superstition Day. It's National Peanut Day. And that's all the days it is. Amazingly, there's only 47 million of them. And that's all. Back to you.
This has been Allison here from Copenhagen on Wacky Wednesday. Hope to see you on Thursday for the doom and gloom that is before coffee.
And this is Roger signing off from Copenhagen, Denmark, where it is beautiful and sunny and about 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Something like, what is that, 20? 18, something like that. Celsius. For this day, September 13th, which is actually a Wednesday, but here in Europe it's a Friday because of this time changes. This is Roger signing off for Before Coffee. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.